So today is Tuesday, October 14th. It is 6:05 p.m. and we'll call this a special meeting for the Board of Directors for the Windham School District to order. First, any correspondence from anyone? I did get Mark was nice enough to send a nice map of the districts. So I did get a map today that I will be sharing with everyone of the current districts that are existing before the redistricting happens. Any changes to the agenda? Nothing?
Is that map in my email? Because I can share screen.
So let me start by pointing out that that is not a current map. That is actually a map that is intended to display the 5 administrative districts that lay over the town school districts. So it doesn't have the detail about SUs and certainly things like union school districts and unified union school districts are not depicted there. But it would be fun to put it up because I would like to make a point of it.
So I will forward that to you guys right now. And that way, Dan, when it gets to a point where we can share that, you'll have the ability to do so. So let me send that to you right now. Anything for correspondence from you guys? If not, we can move on to new business.
No, nothing on this end.
Perfect. So let me just see. Oh, I'm not in my inbox. That's helpful. There we go. I'll forward that to both of you. I think that might be my response from Dan. I was in the, no. Oh, I think Crystal was waiting to be let in. I'm not sure if she is in.
Crystal is in. And
okay, perfect.
She's got her hand raised.
Oh, she does. Okay.
I just want to let you guys know that I have a problem with my Zoom. So sometimes I show that I'm muted, but if I'm not muted, just mute me.
Okay. Fair enough.
Thank you, Crystal.
Sorry for the troubles.
Okay, there we go. I lost the Zoom and I was in my email there. Okay. And we do have the recording going and all that's good. So school districts and governance models in Vermont, overview from the Rural School Community Alliance. So did you guys get a chance to review that? And maybe Daniel, can you share that on the screen so we can just kind of discuss some bullet points there?
No, 1 second.
Abby, I'm on 2 screens, so I've got a laptop and a phone, so I'm here, but I'm looking at 2 different places, but I do have the map up.
Thank you. And I'd also like to take the time to thank the folks that are here in the meeting. There isn't anybody physically here in the school with me, but I do see we have some pretty good attendance. So thank you, Kate, for getting that email out, and for forwarding on to folks, because I'm glad to see you people here. This is important stuff to be discussing. So that's the map that Mark had shared.
And then if I can speak to that just for 1 second.
Sure.
So again, this is many years old, but the last time there was a discussion about dividing up the state of Vermont for education purposes into, say, 5, this was the model. And this was the model that the Agency of Education used back when it was a Department of Education to do certain kinds of things, such as teacher training, collaboration, that kind of stuff. So these are, in a sense, pre-existing administrative units. And so we'll talk a little bit about, what the collaborative model, because I see one of your neighbors is basically saying to the districting commission, hey, we're on it, and trying to solve the problem out front in advance, which I think is a wonderful idea, but it's interesting. So you can imagine yourself. Yeah, and I noticed that the minimum number of students is supposed to be 4,000. So when you think that this entire state represents, what is it now, 80,000 or something, that would envision 20 districts. So somewhere between 5 and 20. But I think this just illustrates an interesting point. But I'll shut up.
No, thank you very much, Mark. That's excellent. And so as we're moving along and discussing kind of where Windham stands, this is kind of a very good visual to have. And there was in the attachments that were sent that should have gone out in the email to everybody. Dan, there's the overview from the Rural School Community Alliance.
Yeah, I can
One of those
share
5
that.
attachments. If you want to just pop that one up too, please.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is it the task force maps explained?
And I think it's school districts and governance.
And governance models, that
There you
PDF?
go.
Yeah, that's the rural school community
So,
alliance
and
one.
I will say that the Vermont model had, for a period of time, received an annual, a national award for having the most, it was called the Rube Goldberg Award, for the most Byzantine and complex and unnecessarily, minute education governance structure. And this, I think, I haven't looked at this document yet, but I believe it purports to encapsulate that. Good luck.
Thank you. So this is a really great, it kind of helps understand like the language that's going on and that we'll be discussing. So for folks in the community that got that in their attachments, please read this to have a better understanding as to what's going on, understanding some of the language and where things are going. We're sharing this information. It kind of came to us just recently. I got all of this on Thursday afternoon before our previous regular meeting. So that is why we're having this special meeting, is to share this information and really be able to hear from the public and the community as to what's going on. So and
let me also interject one more thing,
please
because
do.
my time is limited. You came on after I indicated I really need to run at 6:30. So the stuff that is, I haven't looked at it in great detail, but the stuff that Abby has produced here is really, really good resource material. I don't know what your style is or whatever, but I would create a folder, whether it's a ring binder, old school, or whether it's an electronic folder that, will help you through this process, because there's some really, really good stuff here.
So having gone kind of through that, I think that's just there's the 4 pages there. Dan, if you want to just kind of glance through, we'll take a time to see if the community or anybody has questions regarding this. Then we'll just move along, because we're going to end on public comment, so we can really kind of get the feedback from folks. But this way, with the bullet points that we're hitting today, while we have Mark here, we can get as much feedback from him as well. So does anyone have any questions with this overview?
And let me augment what you're saying by pointing out something like, apropos the Rube Goldberg Award, we have something like 12 different types of school districts and school administrative structures in the state of Vermont. It's pretty crazy. When you talk about, sort of trying to augment or amend or improve or whatever, changing things, it's an incredibly complex process. And so there's a danger, I think, that in these sort of economically fraught times, that the legislature is going to do something kind of maybe unexpected or expedient or political. And for all those reasons, I mean, we talked about a couple of things I just want to lay out before I have to leave, is that there is this move afoot for collaboration. Let us partner with appropriate groups of SUs or town school districts, that makes sense for us at a, let's say, not local level, but a regional level, and then we will basically give it to you as a fait accompli. I think if you can achieve that, that would be great. I mean, again, and that there's going to be somewhere between 5 and 20 school districts for the entire state. So if you can sort of map out, the folks that are adjacent to you, I mean, some people would say, well, they don't have to be adjacent, but practically speaking, I think they do. And come with a common purpose. And I've heard that there is, a certain amount of sort of a feeling, even amongst the local partners, that interests are really divergent. And I would simply say if there's a way to reach consensus about goals, goals you can agree on as a regional group in anticipation of sort of trying to do a collaborative, here's how we think we could have a district of at least 4,000 kids that would make sense. I would encourage you to do that, as opposed to letting the legislature sort of drop something on you. We talked about the fact that school choice and transportation are two really important things, I think, in your particular context. School choice in the sense that, as we currently have it, if you live in a district that does not operate grades at your kid's level, then you have school choice in that respect. Now, there's ways to sort of voluntarily give up school choice, like through these unified school union schools, where you have a district that you become unionized with, if you will, which, and I think is the case for, where do you guys send, you have a union high school, correct?
Correct.
Which one is it?
Leland and Gray.
Leland and Gray. So, that's another, that you don't have school choice because that you're in that union school district. But you have no, I guess you're also in is it a K2 or is it a pre-K that's operated at a higher level? But you have school choice from what, K through 6?
Correct.
So am I right about that or am I mistaken?
K through 5th, but yes.
K through 5th.
Yeah.
Okay. So you could lose
K through
that.
6, that never changed. It does
but
fall
you will,
into issues.
Really?
But you
Yes,
would
with the
potentially
public
lose
school,
that
but-
through a consolidation into a district where there are, in fact, other elementary schools. So unless you were given some sort of legacy or holdover or, grandfathering, if you will, of your rights to school choice. Now, consider that Act 73 is not a done deal at all. It's a study. It's too hard to coalesce all this. And I don't mean to be hard on the legislature. This is incredibly hard stuff. And the outcomes are going to be incredibly messy, let's put it that way. And so one of the things the legislature sometimes does is to punt. Some people would consider the study committee and all this a punt, but whether or not it is, it really hasn't preordained anything, except maybe at least 4,000 kids per district and so on and so forth. I believe the governor supports school choice. I don't know what the final legislation is going to look like on school choice, but you need to circle school choice. I would circle, collaboration as a first thing. Then I would circle school choice because you have to figure that out. Can you preserve it? And that may be a political thing. And then the transportation issue, because I know that you are uniquely providing transportation to kids that don't live in your district and getting reimbursement, but it's not fair in terms of reimbursement. See, all that stuff, I think, the idea of doing that at such a microscopic level is one of the reasons why, there's an argument for going to a larger grain size, like 4,000 kid districts and so on and so forth that could manage or would have the responsibility to manage things like transportation, because you can see how transportation is sort of flipping you upside down these days in terms of the cost and trying to apportion, allocating, how much do non-residents pay to that, so on and so forth. And also keeping in mind that current legislation does not require school districts to provide transportation. So by doing so, you're doing so voluntarily, and so that's something else I think you need to be really intentional about. So if we circled collaboration as issue number one, can you find a group to go to the district commission and say, hey, we got our own big district. Number two, how does school choice work there? Number three, how does the transportation work? Because I think you're in a very unfortunate situation with respect to transportation, and it really needs to be solved. And the last thing that I'll say then, because I really do need to go soon, but happy to take a few questions, is the legislative strategies. Because I talked about, I'm not close enough these days to the chairs of the key committees in the legislature to know whether, for example, any of your local, whether your local representative or representatives and or your senators have positions on key committees, say chair or vice chair of things like the Ed Committee or appropriations or Ways and Means and so on and so forth. Because providing, and I know you're working with the rural schools group, and so I suspect they're working with maybe a lobbyist that then has the ear of the legislature. So to that extent, trying to play politics in this situation, may sound a little bit like a grand thing, but keep in mind that Act 73 doesn't even envision a complete rollout of this consolidation or whatever for, I think, 5 years. So another illustration as to how little was done by the existing legislation. And so it's all coming down the pike. I think you can have a major impact as to how it plays out. But I'd say the stakes are high, and it behooves you to be gathering your thoughts like this. And I think this is a really, the stuff that Abby has put together, I think, is very comprehensive. And it's not that there isn't more, I suspect, but it's a really, really good start. So I'll stop.
Thank you, Mark. And I just want to reiterate, since we got Bob on the line here, I did attend the West River meeting that happened last night. And we had some challenges with our board sending out. We were trying to get our signature lines on the letter that we were sending to West River. And realizing they had a meeting last night, I just kind of made the executive decision to send the letter with just our names typed in there instead of trying to get fancy with the signature lines, because it had been a couple weeks out since we had approved to send that. And it was just becoming more challenging trying to figure that out than not. So when they discussed that, Bob, I was a little, surprised to hear you say that, we're responsible for transportation. And I just want to make sure that it is clear, and that we make it clear to West River that we are not responsible for transportation. We are providing it because we know the importance and what our families and community went through with the school closing. We weren't willing to yank that out from underneath them on top of everything else. So that was the understanding behind it. So I hope, sir, that you can make sure that is reiterated to the West River Board when they get the information that they're looking for. So thank you. And moving on to any questions for Mark, that while people are here and while we have Mark with the things he's kind of touched on.
What I meant transporting.
Oh, what was that? I see a hand up from Kathy Edgerly. Go ahead, Kathy.
So my question, Mark, how much do you think geography, I wish that this chat was filled with parents instead of old people like me, but I just wonder in terms of geography, we're a hill town, and many, many times Townsend and Newfane don't really feel that even though we abut them, we don't abut Newfane, but we abut Townsend, they don't really feel like we're one of them. And then there's Londonderry, which is a town, a hill town like we are, but we're not really one of them either. We are in a very kind of isolated, weird place. So who do you look to? Do you say, well, geographically, we have more in common with hill towns than we do with valley towns? And that 1,000 feet coming up to Windham always seems to be an obstacle for people. So would we be better off looking at who we fit in with better geographically? I don't know. I know that's not where our school is.
I think there has been talk in the past about having statewide districts of non-contiguous districts. I think that's unrealistic. I think that geography is probably preordaining. They were talking about, let's have a district that's just composed of non-operating districts. That's their common theme. And they could be up in the Northeast Kingdom, or they could be down in Newfane or something like that. But I think from a practical standpoint, especially when you're going to between 5 and 20 districts for the entire state, it's got to be geographically contiguous. So there are going to be unique geographic characteristics in every place. I mean, we could lump you in with, the hill communities with Lincoln, but you can't have a district of towns that have steep roads. It's something that I think that the district within which you fall has to take into consideration in terms of among other things, transportation. And, if there's something about transportation being mandatory now that I've missed, my apologies, but I really don't think it is. And so, no, I understand that, being up on a hill that's really hard to get to and from, um, is a factor that goes into it. I mean, I lived through many, many discussions with the State Board of Education about supervisory union borders. And geography is one thing, roads are another. Culture, I don't know. This business of, we're not like them or whatever. I wouldn't say that's a valid factor. Everyone needs to educate the kids. We all want the best for our kids, and we want them on the school buses for the shortest period of time, or have to transport them in our cars for the shortest period of time. And I just think that expectations are going to be really changing. Not so much because of the economy, because the economy is okay, but it's the demographics that are just completely out of whack. Where Vermont's population's been flat for 30 years or something like that, and it's people are moving from the rural areas such as yours into the cities such as we have them here. And so, Franklin and Addison and Chittenden are doing okay, and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's a tough situation. But I think you need to work as a team, recognizing that each of your little component districts may have unique characteristics, but we're all family and we all need to support each other. But I don't think that banding together by towns with districts with steep roads, I don't think there's a path to that.
Thank you, Mark. There's also a question from Crystal Corview. Go ahead, Crystal.
Not really question, but as far as I know, transportation is not mandatory in Vermont. I don't know if that'll change when they do this redistricting, which is, also a concern with, the current bus issues that you guys are talking about, because, the kids in Windham could be required, if we don't have a bus, they could be required to meet the bus at the bottom of the hill, because there's also no obligation to pick kids up at their homes. I have friends that have to drive their kids 3 miles to a bus stop. So the redistricting, that is one of my questions. Like, is transportation now going to be mandatory? Because currently it is not. And a bus more than likely wouldn't be required to come to Windham. If it's not mandatory, you will have to get your kids to a bus stop.
Thank you, Crystal. Kate?
My question about the transportation in that regards, isn't that a decision that we can make as a town, though? If transportation becomes required, we have a bus. If transportation is not required, we have a bus. So don't we get to elect how we manage that? I know that gets complicated based on schools in different directions, but we have an asset. So doesn't that give us a leg up in either direction?
Well, it does. But the question, as I understand it, you're transporting out of the goodness of your hearts, which is great. Kids from outside of your district, and so that they're somehow compensating you. I don't know what the formula is. Some people I've heard that this formula may not be fair. I think that's in one of the letters that I read. And so what's the process for fixing that? I think the process for fixing that is collaboration. I don't think that there's enough money to make busing mandatory. But then you might say, well, how are the kids going to get an education? Not everybody has a car. We've got 2 jobs, husband goes one way, wife goes the other, or whatever. We've got kids in 2 different schools, and so childcare costs, all this stuff. It's a very, very deep a morass that we're facing. And so what I'm saying is it's going to be hard. And that's why I think that collaboration is really in everyone's best interest, because, compromising, so I think you really ought to find the commonalities. And maybe you ought to get a facilitator or something like that to, if you decided, let's say you decided that, I haven't even looked at the map for this purpose, but let's say you decided, it's probably much too big, but I would say, look at the $4,000 student number in the law. And this will be my last comment, and I'm going to drop off. Look at that 4,000 student number and maybe imagine, dream no small dream kind of thing. What would be the best configuration for the 4,000 people that would include you? And then basically maybe the superintendents should have a conversation amongst themselves. Maybe they already have, indicating, if we're going to be forced, it would be better to go voluntarily. Let's have a powwow. I think that would be one of the things I would recommend. I assume that the Vermont Superintendents Association is on that, and Bob can speak to you about that. But I'll stop, and because I really need to go to this other meeting. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak, sort of out of turn. You have some great challenges. You've got some great questions from your very engaged voter base, and a great board and great administration. So make the most of it, and happy to give you further feedback if asked. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you,
And
Mark.
also thank your
Thanks,
wife,
Mark.
Celia.
Okay. Take care.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm glad he was able to join. I really didn't know if he was going to be able to make it. He's a very busy person. So moving back on to Act 73 and kind of understanding Act 73, that was another attachment, Daniel, that was sent, if you wouldn't mind. That one's a lot briefer. I think it's only 2 pages. And I see a question from Pat McLean. Go ahead, Pat.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So my question is, how many students do we have in the current SU?
In the current supervisory union?
Yes.
That would be a Bob question. Bob, do you know the answer to that one?
Well, if you include students who we pay tuition for out, we're about 800 or 900. All of Windham County, all 4 supervisory unions in Windham County make up just under 4,000 students, for context.
So the entire county has about 4,000 students.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
For
Excellent.
clarification, were you talking about the public hearing notice?
This is Act 73, the overview. It was for River Valley School District, had presented that.
Let's see, I have a letter and a task force maps explained.
No, there should have been Act 73.
Look through, maybe it's in a different email.
Hold on, I'm just getting back into my email here.
Okay, to you now.
I mean, it was in, Abby had sent out an email and it had all, I think it's 4 or 5 attachments.
Yeah, I don't see, there's a letter.
Okay, so it would be is task force maps. Yes, understanding
Okay.
Act 73. That is the one.
Okay, cool.
Kathy's got her hand up too. And
I went into my email and then I've made Zoom like a thumbnail. Okay, go ahead, Kathy. Thank you.
So, this whole idea of collaboration is really, really interesting because as the Planning Commission, even looking at how do we work with other towns, it's regionalization is just so uncommon in Vermont, especially, let's just say Southern Vermont, or let's just say Windham County. We don't do a lot of things regionally. And so I was curious to ask Bob whether or not any of the, like his peers have gotten together and said, if we had a magic wand, how would we do this? And to get us to think about Windham County, because we don't think in terms of counties like other states might. But in other words, if we had a pop quiz right now, could all of us accurately list all the towns that are in the county of Windham? I don't know if I could. And how many square miles is it? And are we in the center of it? Are we on the north end of it? How do we fit geographically with our other county members? If that's in fact how the state is going to be looking at larger regions, they're going to say, well, there's already county lines. The supervisory unions follow those lines. It would be a lot easier. Let's just stay in these county designations, which may or may not be right for us. I don't know. So, Bob, have you guys been just looking within counties, or have you ever been saying these county lines don't really work for our purposes? We would be better to not hold ourselves back by county.
So that's a complicated question. I guess the being a county that borders two other states and has an outside border of Vermont, it's kind of hard to go in a different direction other than at least starting with the county. And so if you're going to draw a map of the region, you're trying to get 4,000 kids, you're kind of stuck at least with Windham County to some degree, if not bigger, right? So that's one challenge. But to answer your initial question, yes, the superintendents of those four SUs, we've had conversations. We're all in very different places, and they're somewhat unique. Brattleboro has a population base and a rental housing base unto itself, and has a certain level of scale that the other three SUs don't have. Bells Falls, on the other hand, Windham Northeast, they have a draw towards Springfield in some ways for their students to go to the regional career center up there. They can go to Brattleboro or Springfield. So they're kind of drawn in two directions. And Windham Southwest, the Wilmington district all the way over to Stamford is pretty rural and disparate. They have a lot of kids on the border towns that actually go to high school in Massachusetts. So, and we're the ones that are in the middle, kind of left there in the middle. So the challenge is it's all very disparate in what the needs are. And you guys, of course, are at the northern boundary of Windham Central, which means that you're at the edge of the county to begin with. So, and with the topography that you've talked about earlier, that does create some challenges. A couple of the maps that the task force has already been looking at include the county model, a career center or CTE center model, which again would have Windham County in essence going to Brattleboro in that region, or the BOCES model, which is more like a regional collective, and that's sort of us, and then sprawling up the Connecticut River Valley up more towards, including up as far up as Woodstock and Norwich and that direction. So that's a really big sprawling one that would be, if we were closer to the 5 districts, if you will. So yeah, I mean, we've had lots of conversations, but there's no conclusions. And I think one of the things that I think you guys have mentioned in this meeting before is that the SU does have a subcommittee that is charged with kind of following this. And I think Dwight Borum, who has sent some of those materials to Abby, is actually exploring some conversations with other board members from other SUs. So yeah, there's a lot of collaboration happening, but there's no easy fix. There's no silver bullet to that. So I'm happy to be directed in whatever manner you guys see fit. Just let me know how I can help.
Thank you, Bob. I got 2 more hands up. Crystal, I see your hand, and then Michael, I see your next. So go ahead, Crystal.
This is a question for Bob. And you more than likely don't know the answer because I feel like we really don't know anything. They are saying, they want 4,000 kids per district. So is that K through 12, 4,000 kids? And are they thinking, we're going to have all these kids between, you know, 2 to 3 buildings?
So yeah, so they are talking about K to 12, but they're not talking about buildings. They're just talking about the size of the governance structure that would run things. The other thing to keep in mind is that one of the things the task force is charged with doing is developing at least one of the 3 maps to include SUs. In other words, your district could exist as it does with no change. If it was an SU that was created, it would just be a bigger SU than ours. It would be 3 or 4 SUs combined into a super SU, if you will. But the districts would all continue to exist. And the Rural Schools Community Alliance is pushing for that model because they believe that the SU gives the most opportunity for things like choice, like Mark was mentioning earlier. And the other idea would be, of course, a single district, which would then change all of the things that you were talking about. And so, yes, choice would depend on how those districts are formed. And transportation would be the responsibility of that new district. And then Windham Board, as an entity, would cease to exist. So, yeah, it's the SD versus SU model. And that's, in fact, one of the major arguing points of Act 73 for folks whether or not they want one model versus the other. And I can get into more detail about the advantages and disadvantages of each if that's what you guys would like, but I'll let you guys take more questions first.
But I assume that part of this process of saving money on education is going to be to close some buildings and consolidate, which is concerning because you guys just did this big thing 1 or 2 years ago saying how many students each building would hold. And our buildings obviously aren't going to hold more than, like, isn't Newbrook like 200 kids?
Yeah, so I think the savings of money, you're right, Crystal, is going to come from school closings, but that's really down the line. I think once the new funding formula would get adopted, and that can't happen until a redistricting happens. So it's like a couple of steps away, and I think what they're hoping is that the pressure of a foundation formula versus our current formula of funding will pressure whatever the new entities are to close some schools. That being said, the emphasis, I believe, is on regionalization of secondary schools, and that people generally understand and believe that they want their I'm not going to say small, let me take that away. They want their elementary schools to be local as much as possible. So I think that's part of that dichotomy of, does the high school go away and there's a bigger regional school somewhere else, but the elementary schools remain? I think that's sort of the thinking. But yeah, I guess it's all up in the air, right?
Thank you, Crystal. Michael, I'll go ahead.
Yeah, my thought process is sort of in line with where Crystal was headed. I sort of have 2 pieces. One is I've heard the rumor that a consolidation of students might do something like put all of the elementary students at Leland and Gray and then move all of the high school students to Brattleboro. In which case, then my question is, if that is the case, we're looking at significant transportation distances and potential challenges with road conditions. Then I'm wondering if it might be a consideration to sort of go the other direction, in which case our elementary students might go to, for instance, Floodbrook, and then high school students might go that direction, or to like Chester or something like that, if that district became, if Chester was merged with that other side of the world over there. Anyway, so that's my question.
And I would say to Mike that Michael, that's where this meeting that you guys are having is really important, because what is it that your community wants? If your community wants that latter model that you described, then that's what you should be articulating in written form to the task force. And I think that, to me, that's what the purpose of your guys' meeting is about, is to figure out, is there a single will of the community, or a prevailing will, let's say, that you can then articulate in writing to give to the task force that says, hey, when you blow stuff up, here's where we'd like to land. And that's exactly what Stratton did with their letter. They said, if you blow things up and you're going to change boundaries, please push us more towards the Manchester side, because the bulk of our kids already go to school there. And that was their letter.
Could I follow up?
Yes.
So I guess, I mean, those are definitely considerations, and we definitely need to think about that as a community. And my question overall is, I mean, those are two potentially like hugely different avenues. And I think it would be reassuring to the community if the current supervisory union had I'm not going to call it a plan, but like a potential model. If the supervisory union said, hey, this is what we're thinking, this could be a scenario that might work for us as a supervisory union, and our community was able to look at it and understand it, it would be a consideration that might influence our direction versus us just sort of coming up with something off the cuff.
Yes. Thank you, Michael. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and just to respond to that, Abby, I would just say the one challenge to that is the supervisory union doesn't control what individual districts do per se. So the West River district and what plan they may or may not have for their buildings is not something the SU really has control over until such time that there was a new district formed. You know what I'm saying? So it is hard to know without asking the West River district what their plans might be.
True, but you as a superintendent do have the opportunity to speak with other superintendents to sort of formulate a plan or a potential direction, and can clearly influence districts' boards to say, hey, this is a potential option that might work for all of us.
That's fair.
Okay, go ahead, Kate.
Crystal had her hand up before mine. I don't know if hers is in relationship to something. I don't want to steal a spot.
Just want to point out that everybody also needs to keep an eye on the Taconic and Green, because Floodbrook is one of the schools that could possibly be going away. So if you're thinking Floodbrook, like, there's a good chance you're ending up in Manchester. So when you're thinking about other areas you may want to land, you need to be watching these areas around you, because Floodbrook is one of the schools that they've talked about closing.
Yeah, I believe the understanding with that was the middle school students. So it would be their middle school students. They were looking to move along and not stay within the building and have that stay just elementary school. And they really didn't want to do that. From my understanding, that was a large part of the argument when they were having their discussions. But that's a very good point, Crystal, as far as all of these changes. And I think Bob just hit on that too, is it's hard to kind of formulate what the end goal is when everything is up in the air. So everyone's kind of grasping at straws. It's typical, I feel, at this point for the state of Vermont, cart before the horse, or however that saying goes. But horse before the cart, I can't remember.
Well, I just want to point out
I do want to add real quick here, because we kind of started off with Bark and we've been all over the place. I just want to look at the agenda real quick and say, we had these bullet points. We're heading up next, the letter that River Valley sent. We're going to discuss if we should be doing something similar. And then we're going to also try to navigate within this group of people that are here tonight. Are there specific questions that we want to focus on for Windham for this meeting that's going to be taking place on Thursday? I anticipate, and Bob would probably agree with this, is a large amount of people that will be attending. I think there's 2 minutes that are for each person for comment. So I just want people to be informed and making the best, questions. Okay. So does that make sense to folks?
It does. I just want to point out that if we did join that area, it's not like you're just joining for K through 6. You have to join for K through 12. So that then means your middle schoolers will be traveling down Manchester Mountain.
Yep. Okay, go ahead, Kate. Sorry, I jumped in there over you.
I frequently think about the line from Whose Line Is It Anyway, where the show's made up and the points don't matter. And I think that the idea that we have control here is not really real. I think we can talk philosophically about a whole bunch of really amazing solutions, but there is a timeline and it's a request. We have no authority. And I think as a town, it would be important for us, since our SU, I hear what Michael's saying about what the SU's direction is, and then I think about what Abby said, where the SU's direction is up in the air too. So I think zooming into what we as Windham want would be really beneficial, and knowing that is just a Christmas list, and that's not, it's going along with everybody else's Christmas list.
Yes. And I did speak with Mark today. I do have bullet points for us that I think we should really just keep our focus on here for Windham. That will be pretty common understanding. The geographic redistricting, really understanding what that's going to look like for us. It does impact us. Choice, the preservation of choice, that I think is going to be shared pretty evenly throughout the community. And understanding that transportation, as we were going through Act 73, that's just a snippet of it. I was going through the, 157-page document or whatever it is of the actual legalese for Act 73. I did not see anything in there at all really stuck out to me that focused anything on transportation. So I do anticipate this meeting Thursday that is going to be a popular subject, but to keep us focused on our agenda and what we can know and understand for Windham, I just want to move along so that, we put public comment, and I'm trying to make sure we're getting to anyone who has questions as much as we can. But I want to be respectful of people's time and stay focused on making sure we're getting the information out and people are aware and prepared for Thursday. So does that work for folks? Perfect. So I see Dan's pulled up the redistricting letter. So this is the hearing notice for the task force for the meeting on Thursday, which is at Leland and Gray. So as you can notice, there's the 4 meetings: Bradford, Townsend, Rutland, and Winooski. So Townsend, Southern Vermont, we're getting all of Southern Vermont that's going to be coming to Townsend for folks that are interested in the redistricting task force. So it's not just us. The letter that was sent from River Valley to the task force, it's just an example. Again, all of these documents were included with the agenda you guys got in your emails that Kate had sent out. And I think what we really wanted to discuss was, should our district really be putting something together to get to them? We don't have a ton of time to just kind of wait and see things out. And as Bob had mentioned for Stratton, if we have ideas and we know of certain things like preservation of choice that we are fairly confident, that's going to be a commonality in our community we want to advocate for, we need to make sure we're articulating that and making that heard, so that when things come down the pipeline, we've had something out there. So do people have thoughts on us doing a letter? Have folks even read what River Valley had submitted? Pat McLean, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the issue of choice is a real key one, and I think that should be featured really prominently in the letter. And I think it probably extends not only to elementary school, but to middle and high school as well.
100%. 100% agree. Thank you, Pat. So Pat thinks we should do a letter. What are the folks here feeling as far as our district working together, collaborating a letter? Because that's something we can get started on, and try to get to them, as soon as reasonably possible. We'd have to have another special meeting to collaborate on that letter and approve it to send it out. But I think that that's within reason. So Pat, is your hand still up? Did that, or do you have another question? Oh, okay. Michael?
Yeah, I'd have to echo what Pat said. I think the town has clearly spoken. I think that choice would make good sense for our town because of our geographical location. Regardless of how the districts are reformed and so forth, I think it makes sense that our town chooses to retain choice and extend it to middle school and high school.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so what I am hearing so far is it does sound like we should submit a letter. And I don't know, Dan, you could probably stop sharing your screen. I think we've got all the stuff on there. There we go. Now I can see people again here. So focusing on the letter, like I said, the big bullet points in talking with Mr. Ottinger earlier was the preservation of choice. And I do think that one of the things and we will have to consider and that we'll learn more about on Thursday. And I think our board should kind of write this letter maybe after we get more information from Thursday's meeting. Just so we're even more informed to send this, but transportation and what's going to happen with transportation, because I think our community is willing to recognize the importance of helping kids get to school. We have a bus. So no matter what ends up happening, I think that that is a goal to continue within reason. So as long as there's collaboration with whatever the kids are going to school, then I think we can make it work. But at the same time, that is something that is going to be a major point. And just our geographic situation with, as Kathy had pointed out, the valleys and the hilltop towns, how that works if we remain choice and moving forward. So, Kate, Dan, do you guys have either me, do you want me to start making a rough draft of a letter that we could send out and then have another special meeting sometime to just discuss that letter, and would be a much shorter meeting than this one?
That's fine. Or if you want however I can be helpful, let me know.
Do you want to try to do a draft to send out, or does Dan want to try to do a draft to send out? I am not, by all means, the almighty letter maker.
Yeah, I can definitely edit. If there's any type of draft out there, I could take a look and add my 2 cents.
Okay.
I think that's probably where I'd.
Okay.
Abby, I can draft it. If you give me a deadline, I can do it.
Okay. So we'll have the meeting on Thursday. That is the redistricting task force meeting Thursday. Next, I'm looking at my calendar here, folks. Hold on. 14th. Did Tuesday work? Do we want to look at by next Tuesday, having the 21st, having a meeting to get something finalized so we can send it? That's a week.
Oh, next week is
out of control.
Next week is shot. I'd probably have to do a daytime meeting next week. I couldn't do a 6 p.m.
Okay. Would Daniel, what about you?
What day again?
So Kate was saying that if she was anytime next week, it would have to be a daytime meeting for her. Is your availability for next week?
Daytime is preferable, yeah.
So like noon? Go over the letter piece?
Yeah, sometime around lunchtime.
I don't want to make it inaccessible for everybody, but it's just That's unfortunate. If I'm involved, that's what I can do next week, and sadly.
Well, this meeting's being recorded. We're going to encourage folks to, review it, share the information. So if we can just have an email blast that goes out to the community that says, hey, we're going to be sending out this letter. If there's information you really want us to be making sure we're putting in there to email us, to email the board. So we know.
So how about I send out a preliminary email also?
That would be fabulous.
How about I send out like a survey thing?
That would be great.
Okay.
So Kate will take care of that, and then we'll schedule for noon on Tuesday the 21st.
And then there's a Kat and a Crystal who have hands up still.
Okay, sorry. Pat, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just thinking about this meeting on Thursday night, as well as the letter. And I think the issue of transportation for the mountain towns is quite different from the issue of transportation for more urban towns and cities. And I think it's important that we put out a very strong position that we can't have education of the children from the mountain towns without having transportation. And we
Yes.
might even be able to throw out some information about how far away these children are currently from the school. Because I don't know what people think when they think that it's not an essential part of education. It has to be here.
I agree, Pat.
Abby, can I jump in real quick on that too?
Yes, please go ahead, Bob.
Well, I was going to say that there is a lot of discussion around the travel times. It's really what it's coming down to. I don't know that they're changing the requirement of it or not, but as you guys talked about earlier, it isn't required by law. But I don't believe there's a single district in the state that doesn't provide it. So, I mean, even though it's not required, everyone does it. But to this point, I think that the conversations that I've been involved with the Superintendent's Association, as they start to define, the State Board of Ed is going to be defining scarcity and small by necessity and those kinds of things around some of the elementary schools. And one of the things that they're talking about is travel times. So how long is a kindergartner on a bus for versus how long is a high schooler on the bus for, and those kinds of things. So to be able to weigh in on those and say, either in your letter or Thursday night, to be able to say, hey, look, we don't believe a kindergartner should ride a bus for more than whatever, X number of minutes. Those kinds of things I think are really important to get out there because they're hearing that from around the state and they're hearing that from superintendents as well, that there ought to be some kind of a cap with regards to transportation as far as the length of travel. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Bob. Crystal, is your hand still up or did you have another question?
It is still up. I'm hoping that, and Kate said it, so I'm hoping you guys can do this. I would like to see a survey go out to the parents saying, hey, look, where are you thinking you want to land for school? I don't think the board should write a letter and say, hey, we want to end up in, the Floodbrook. I can't even think because of this head cold. But as to the piece of transportation, all the districts, for the most part, do provide transportation, but it's not required. So to Pat's point, I would like to see something get put in place that says it is required. But that's it. A survey and required transportation.
Thank you, Crystal. Excellent. School board. I just wanted to put my placeholder in my calendar here. So with that, and this has been great conversation, questions for the redistricting task force meeting on Thursday. As I had mentioned earlier, that this is going to be a bunch of folks. It is virtual as well as in person, Bob, correct? There's a Teams option, I believe.
That is correct. Sorry, I had to unmute. Yes, that's correct.
And as far as you know, Bob, is that going to be just as involved online as it is in person? I think I heard something about there being like breakout groups, which is totally possible on Teams. I've had many team meetings where we've had to do breakout groups. So I just want to make sure people are aware of that option and ensure that that option also means they're just as involved as if they were there in person. Because I think that there's going to be quite an attendance.
Yeah, I can't speak to how they're doing that, but I did hear that there were going to be like roundtable discussions. I always think that being in person is always better if you can make it. It's not that far given all the other locations. So I think an in-person presence is certainly way better than online. But if you can't do it online is all you can do, then that is also fine.
Excellent. So with the group that we have here, are people feeling like they have an idea of what they want to ask when they get to the meeting, or ideas of what information they're still looking to obtain other than like the what's happening that we all want to know? But is there things that we should be discussing here to help people better formulate questions for Thursday? Is really this bullet point of the agenda to make sure we're supporting everyone with providing information to get those questions answered.
I think, Abby, if you're focusing on things you've mentioned, transportation, and if you have opinions on SU's district, those are the kinds of things I think you want to be able to emphasize that you have an interest in discussing. I think those are that's a pretty good list right there. There's a lot of depth and involved.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, Bob. So this brings us to the public comment section. I don't know if there's anyone that is here at the meeting that has anything they'd like to share at all other than what we've kind of bulleted out here, but please do share your thoughts if there's anyone here. Michael, go ahead. It's Michael Pelton.
I know that, sorry. I know that this is a district question, and there are lots of districts in the state, and every district is very unique. But I think that our state has been broken up with supervisory unions so long that the supervisory unions are effectively, I know they're not in control of the districts, but they have they definitely have a hand in what the districts do, right? They advise the districts and try to help the districts, formulate a plan to have a successful, provide successful education. I would request that the districts, knowing what the legislature is trying to do, work in concert with each other to provide answers to the task force, preemptively, because I think the districts, the districts have such a small, they have such a small window of what's going on, whereas the supervisory unions as a collective and the superintendents have a much larger and broader perspective. They do work in concert with the state. So I think those are the entities that can point the task force in a more proactive and successful endeavor. I'm not saying that the supervisory unions are necessarily able to respond to individual districts' needs as much as the district itself, but I think that the supervisory union and the superintendent specifically can definitely influence that and provide. I think if the superintendents got together, I think they could probably influence a much better outcome. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. I see Ginny Crittenden. Is that you, Ginny, or is that Dave? And you're muted.
There.
Here you are. It's Ginny.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
all these little steps. Well, good work, you guys. I just feel like it's a thorny question and a thorny problem for this state in general, but also for this little area. I just remembered, and nobody has talked about that several years ago, there were kids in North Windham who were really, they went to high school at the Green Mountain High School, and nobody's talked about that area as a possibility for consolidation, because it seems like the transportation would be easier that way. I don't know. That's just my comment about that.
Thank you, Jenny.
Okay.
Anybody else to have a comment or public comment or question? Okay. Hearing none, I can, I guess, before we take a motion to adjourn, recommend everyone here reach out to your friends, make them aware of what's going on Thursday. Let's be united as in you in Windham here. Oh, I see Kathy Adgerley with your hand. Go ahead.
I just wondered, Abby, if it would be a good idea to reach out to Tom, whatever his name is, and Nader and Wendy, and just find out, do they want to sit in on one of our meetings? Or what's their, in other words, what is the position of our representatives? I just looked up all the chairs of all the committees, and there's nobody from Windham. Nader is on the judicial, but nobody is on education as a chair. Maybe they are as a member, but it would seem to me that we need to know where we can get help from our representatives, who are the closest thing to a lobbyist that we have.
Yes, that's very good.
Abby, let me help you out there too. Emily Long is on the House Ed committee. No, she's not a chair, but she's on the committee. And Wendy Harrison is actually on the task force, the redistricting task force. So she is people who will be present Thursday night and taking your input. And I've met with her and some regional superintendents and some other legislators a couple of times to talk through some of the challenges of our geography. In fact, she brought down one of the co-chairs of the task force, Martine Gulick, Senator Gulick, who is from Burlington, and we made her drive all the way to Jamaica to the JVS building where we held the meeting, so she could at least see what rural Vermont looked like a little bit. So I think Wendy's doing a great job of making sure that people in the Chittenden County and Washington County regions know that Southern Vermont is a real place with real challenges around our geography and our demographics. And so if you do talk with her, she's pretty aware. She doesn't understand the broader sort of governance side of things, although I think she's learning it quickly because she was not on an education committee, but she is willing to learn and willing to listen.
Thank you very much, Bob.
And let me also just throw in one last thing before the meeting ends. If you are at this meeting on Thursday night, I will not be in attendance as it's my daughter's senior night soccer game. And I regret that conflict, but I have to go with my family on that one. I'm sorry.
No worries, Bob. Pat McLean, go ahead. See your hand.
Yeah, if people are interested, I will certainly raise it with WCO about sponsoring another legislator meeting at the Meeting House, maybe for November, if that's of interest. And we haven't had one in a while, but we could certainly organize that. And that would be another opportunity to talk, for more people to talk to these people.
Yes, 100%. Please, Pat, please and thank you. Awesome. Well, I will entertain a motion if somebody wants to make one. Oh, heck, I'll do it. It is 7:13 and I move to adjourn. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right. So any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, folks. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Appreciate it. And look forward to seeing y'all next week and this Thursday at Leland and Gray, 6 p.m.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Good night.